Is this on? Hello. Good evening, everybody. If I could ask everybody to take their seats, please, or stand behind the podium with your name on it. Thank you very much. First, I want to welcome everybody to the Brattleboro Select Board Candidates Debate 2025. We thank everybody for coming, and my name is Melanie Winters. I'm the managing editor of the Brattleboro Reformer. And for the candidates we have here, we have quite a few candidates. I think more than in my 14 years of being with the Reformer, I think this is the most candidates that we've ever seen. We have two candidates running for the 3-year seat. We have Oscar Heller, and we have Jill Stahl-Tyler. There are 2 vacancies or open seats for the 1-year seat, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 candidates. Franz Rishman, excuse me. Rishman, I had it right the first time. I apologize. Okay. Richard Davis. Richard. Amanda Ellis Thurber. Isaac Evans Franz. Christina Cheyanye. Okay. Yay, okay. Thank you very much. And Tim Wessel. Over there in the corner. Okay. Thank you all for coming. We also want to thank the Richards Group for underwriting tonight's debate and being a great community partner. At this time, I would like to introduce Amelia Darrow, a local attorney, a longtime resident, and our moderator for this evening.
Can everyone hear me? Great. Well, I want to thank everyone for coming and thank the candidates for being here. I'm honored to be asked to moderate what I initially thought was a forum, but turns out to be a debate. And I'm excited about this because debate has a time-honored practice of civic discourse, and it provides an opportunity not to just make statements or speeches. No one gets to make a speech tonight except me. And instead, we're really engaged in dialogue. And that's what that's at the heart of debate. So before I get to the housekeeping part of this part of tonight's presentation, I wanted each of you to think about your reasons for being here. Take a moment and think, are you here because you want to learn more about each of these candidates? Are you here because you're supporting someone who's before you? Are you here because you care about this community and you care about where it's going? I'm guessing most of us are here for many reasons. And now I want you to think about your neighbors, the people here in this room and the people before you, maybe the people at home. Why are they here? Because tonight we're really not just thinking about what we need from these candidates individually, we're thinking about what we need as a community. And I believe that we all commonly have the same interests. And those are a place that we feel is a place we feel comfortable, we feel excited to be in every day, we feel a sense of meaning, purpose, that we are here doing something good, and that we're doing it together. And I think that each of these candidates here are here for those reasons. And I'd like to hear more about that from them. We have some very hot issues in this town, and some of those are appearing on our ballot, which I believe just came out in print today, and early voting has begun. So we're going to talk about some of those issues tonight. And I have questions to ask these candidates. The way it's going to work is I will read a question, and then I'll ask Mel here to pull a name out of a hat. We're going to take the order of the candidates' responses to the question randomly so that no one is getting favor, right? This is supposed to be fair. Each of the candidates will have 90 seconds to respond to the question. So these aren't speeches. They're just a statement. But it's not a yes or no question. Or if it is, we're asking for an explanation. Once one person has spoken, the next person will answer the same question, and we'll go down the line based on what the hat tells us whose turn it is. After those questions, or after one question is answered by each candidate, we'll open it to the rebuttal period. And rebuttal is intended to be a chance for discussion, a chance for a candidate to respond to how someone else answered the question. But it's not an open interruption period, right? We're going to raise our hands or indicate that we'd like to speak. And as Melanie said earlier, 2 candidates are vying for one position, and that's Jill and Oscar over there. And then there are 6 that are vying for 2 positions. So even though we have the same questions, we may have more of a conversation between some of the candidates or among some of the candidates because of they're competing for the same seat. Is that clear to everyone? Good. We're going to take 10 minutes on rebuttal, so that allows for the discussion. And then we'll move on to the next question, and we'll use the same format. We expect tonight to last about 2 hours, just with that format. So we don't expect to take questions from the audience, although we do have some that were submitted earlier, and if we have time, we'll consider taking those up. So with that, I'm going to ask Melanie to choose a name. The question before you, Franz Reichman, is a ballot article would advise the state legislature to seek the approval of voters before authorizing the establishment of an overdose prevention center, also known as a safe injection site, in the town of Brattleboro. What is your position on whether such a site should be established?
Well, hello everybody.
I'm so sorry. Skip one part, the 90-second introductions.
Thank you. The 90-second introductions. We did skip those.
Yeah.
And I hope that answers your questions. Are we going to do something else first? Is that what's going on?
Why don't we, Franz, why don't you make your introduction? And I apologize to everyone for not giving you your 90 seconds to give your introductions.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Franz Reichman. I've been on the Select Board for the past 2 years, and for 5 years before that, I was chair of the Representative Town Meeting Finance Committee. And I got to thinking this morning, so what should I talk about in my opening statement? And what struck me was just the high level of interest in this year's elections and all the political questions floating around. And what is it that brings us here? It's problems. So I want to take just a little time to appreciate our problems, because they're really what's motivating us here tonight to get together and deal with the future of our community, basically. The problems we're facing range from the small, like when is that pothole going to get fixed, to the medium-sized, like, oh my God, look at that tax increase, to the very large of will our democracy survive. But I think our response to the problems is correct, Brattleboro's response, which is increased interest in community and in government. So I would invite you to take a look at these 8 candidates. I think we're an excellent group. I think everyone here is very well qualified and has the credentials to serve on the Select Board. So find the one who you think is the best possible candidate, vote for that person, and then don't forget to vote for me too. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Isaac Evans-Franz.
Thank you to the Brattleboro Reformer for hosting this debate. My campaign asked for this debate because you as voters deserve answers. You deserve the questions to be asked, and you deserve to know where we stand and what's different about us. For me, I'm running because of values. I'm running because of the values of freedom and unity. I had the good fortune of being born at Brattleboro Memorial Hospital in 1982, and if you're wondering how old that makes me, it's 42. Mrs. Boardman was my high school teacher there at Brattleboro Union High School. I'm running because I'm deeply committed to this town, and as we've been knocking on doors, whether it's in Marlborough Avenue on Sunday or up in Chestnut Hill with Betsy Gentili here last week, or all over town, what we've been hearing over and over is that people are concerned about the property taxes. They're concerned about a 12% increase in the property taxes. And sure, some folks are a little uncomfortable going downtown and being asked for money. And there are concerns, real concerns about safety, the 16% increase in reported burglaries and assaults and other major offenses. But what I know is that working together, having built national coalitions of people on the right and the left, we can get real solutions. If we've been able to move legislation through a divided Congress and get it to the president's desk, I know that we can solve the problems that our town faces. Thank you.
Well, it's really great to see this many candidates, and it makes me realize that, at least on our level, on a very local level, democracy is alive and well, despite what may be happening at a higher level. And I think everybody knows what I'm referring to. In Brattleboro, taxes seem to be on everybody's mind, and I mean, almost everybody is impacted by the level of taxes and the increases, and it's very difficult for most people. As a candidate, I feel, and as a select board member, which I have been for the past year, I feel like what's important for a select board member is to be able to balance what the town needs and what the town can afford. But in order to figure out what that balance is, we have to listen to the people. So the question in my mind always is the most vocal part of a community the part you listen to? Or should we solicit and make a better effort at getting more of a sense of what public opinion is really all about? And it's very difficult when you're on the select board to understand what the majority of the public opinion is, but we do our best. And I hope that I can continue to do this using my level of common sense and my ability to listen to people and try to figure out what they need.
Thank you, Richard. Okay, next one is Amanda.
Thank Brattleboro Television and the Reformer and our audience here in the room and our audience at home. Thank you for coming out and participating. People in Brattleboro work hard. They want a leader who is a worker, a bridge builder, an innovator. I can be that leader, and I can do it with kindness and respect for all. A wise person told me, who's worked in town government for a long time, that if I got elected to select board, I should always remember these 3 core principles. The job of a select board member is to allocate the financial parts of that we pay in to allocate money towards municipal services in the most cost-effective way to the benefit of our taxpayers, and keep going back to those core principles. Sounds boring, but that is what town government can be. Brattleboro and southern Vermont are on a knife's edge of economic disaster. Yes, we have community needs, and many of our community members are suffering. We need to come together with resources from our state government to address our needs, and at the same time, with good planning, we can grow our economy. Add to our grand list and make Brattleboro a place businesses can establish themselves. The same businesses pay taxes so that we can afford to be innovative and grow, while at the same time care for our neediest community members and be an affordable place to live.
Thanks, Amanda. Okay, Jill is up.
Thanks to all of you for coming out. I'm running because I'm deeply rooted here in Brattleboro. And I guess I was going to use this time to introduce myself. You guys have all gone on to topics, but the reason that I'm here, during my 30 years living here, or 35 years, I've been a local small business owner. I'm a mother to 3 children. All 3 of them went to the local public Brattleboro schools. I'm now the executive director at Community House. It's a residential program and a day school for children with emotional needs located, at that stop sign right before you go down into town. And I've volunteered for all sorts of things here and doing all sorts of fun stuff like driving for winter sports and baking the cupcakes and hosting the pasta parties and organizing an endowment and working with the school board, including 8 years on the school board and 5 years as chair. I've also written for the Reformer, and you've probably seen my name around here because I bug people all the time about hosting international exchange students, which, by the way, still looking for homes. And I'm also the current president of the Brattleboro Garden Club and sing with the choir. So I feel like I'm deeply rooted. But I'm running because I'm concerned about the safety in downtown Brattleboro. And my parents are dairy farmers, and they said, if you want to have something different, you better get to work and be a part of it.
Thanks, Jill. Tim, you're up.
Great, thank you, and thank you to the Reformer. What a lovely building we're in, and I'm really appreciative of the new format. I'm Tim Wessel. I served on the board. I was elected 4 times and served on the board from 2017 to 2023, so that's for 6 years. And I was chair during the challenging year of 2020 when we had to deal with the pandemic, and we're the first board to go totally online with their meetings. I am the older end of Gen X. I'm 57. My wife had to remind me this morning. I have, that means that I have punk, hip-hop, grunge in my head at all times, but also a disturbing amount of Phil Collins, so some of you might get that joke. I have a 35-year-old son who is a musician and also might help you choose your cheese at the co-op, and a 7-year-old son, believe it or not, at Green Street School right now. So we are definitely downtown. We are embedded. We live and work here, my wife and I. And I should say, because we modified this from 2 minutes to 90 seconds, so I'm trying to cut out some stuff. I really hope I'll be reelected because this is a good moment for me, I think, to bring back some fiscal responsibility to the Brattleboro Select Board. So I'd like to be one of your choices to help do that. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Oscar, it's your turn.
My name's Oscar Heller. I'm running for one of the 3-year seats. I've been a town meeting rep for 7 or 8 years. I've been serving on Brattleboro's Finance Committee for the past 6, and I'm the chair this year. I'm very much a details and policy kind of guy. I'm leaving here to go back to my office and work for a couple hours finishing up this year's Finance Committee report. But that's not really what I'm going to be talking about tonight, because the thing that I have been hearing over and over again as I meet with people and talk to people and even, observe social media, as nightmarish as that can be, we need to find a way to find some common ground as a town. That is what I've been hearing that people are truly hungry for, and it's how I feel. I think that the last 12 months may have been the most divisive internally in Brattleboro that I can remember. And I think we are at a point where, for a number of reasons, the most important thing we can do is get people in a room, start talking to each other again like neighbors, and recognize really how much political common ground we share as a town. I don't think it's an impossible ask, and it's a theme I'm going to be returning to tonight because I think it's the most important thing on our plate right now. Thank you.
Thanks, Oscar. Christina, you.
Thanks, everyone. And I'm going to start by saying that Our select board should be as diverse as our town, and as a low-income working parent, I bring a voice to the board that is not usually represented. And my partner who's at home cooking dinner for 2 toddlers screaming at him can tell you why. But working families are vital to the future of Brattleboro, and my family's ready to make that sacrifice for our town because the child care crisis, the opioid crisis, and the housing crisis can make it feel impossible to raise a family here. I have a unique capacity to ride effortlessly between the personal and the universal with an ability to see the big picture within the little picture. And really, I'm running because I am concerned with the growing political divisiveness in our town and believe that we desperately need to stop fighting each other and fight the opioid crisis and solve the housing crisis. And I don't believe that our municipality can solve those crises alone, which is why I plan to strengthen the working relationship between our town government and our state legislators, all the while making sure the voices of the residents who we serve are centered. As a resident, I've been frustrated with trying to participate in our local democracy and reaching out to the town, asking for more opportunities to be heard and to be informed and get the response of come to a select board meeting. Well, a select board meeting is not a public forum. A select board meeting is not a community conversation, and I will make sure we strengthen our local democracy by creating more pathways for meaningful public engagement before policy is enacted, and I'm going to stop now. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. And thank you for being respectful of the time. It'll allow things to move along and keep the conversation light and, moving. So just a reminder on how this format will go. Again, I'll read the question. If anyone needs me to read it again before you answer yours, I can do so. You'll have 90 seconds, just as you had now, so you have a sense of how long 90 seconds is, not long, to answer the question, and then we'll move on to the next person who will also answer the question. It's only after all of you have answered it that we'll start the rebuttal period. And each rebuttal will be 60 seconds. And we hope for a lively conversation. So with that, I'll repeat the question I mistakenly read earlier, and then we'll pull a name from the hat. Again, a ballot article would advise the state legislature to seek the approval of voters before authorizing the establishment of an overdose prevention site, also known as a safe injection site, in the town of Brattleboro. What is your position on whether such a site should be established? Richard, would you please start us off?
I've done a lot of research and given a lot of thought to this topic, and I honestly believe that for the town of Brattleboro, this is a very bad idea to have a safe injection site, and there's a couple of reasons. One, everything I've read relates to large urban areas where this has been a successful program. It does have a track record of saving lives. That's sort of indisputable, but only within the context of high volume and in an urban setting, and we certainly are not in an urban setting here. The other reason that I don't think it's a good idea for Brattleboro is this is an incredibly polarizing issue. We've had enough polarization in this community over the last year. We don't need a new issue to get mad at each other over, and that is a very strong feeling that I have about us embarking on that route. On the other hand, as a select board member, we put this up to the voters. We want to know what people think. And we want to know, hopefully, what a significant number of people think based on the voter turnout. Hopefully that will tell us something. So that's pretty much my answer. But I just want to say to people, if you want to talk to me afterwards, there's a lot more details related to this issue that haven't come out in public, and I'd be glad to tell people about it.
Thank you. Christina, you're up.
Can you repeat the last part of the question?
Well, the question itself is, what is your position on whether such a site should be established?
Okay. So it's not about the actual article, because I did want to clarify that the article will not let us know how people feel about OPCs. The article that you will all be voting for on March 4th will let us know if you want to be able to vote on whether there should be an OPC in our town. So that's a very important distinction. And I don't know much about OPCs, but my understanding is that, as Richard pointed out, it is undeniable that they save lives, and apparently the research shows that they decrease public drug use, they decrease needles on the street, they decrease emergency response needs, they decrease a lot of things that our town needs to decrease. And they also do not increase crime. In fact, I'm pretty sure that in some places they have proven to decrease crime. But if this is such a controversial, deal-breaking, we're just going to fight each other instead of the opioid crisis topic, then I am totally open to an alternative to OPCs that boost such great success. I would just like to hear an alternative instead of just shut down a program that has proven to save lives and reduce drug addiction. Thank you.
Thank you. Isaac.
I plan to vote no on this article for 3 reasons. First of all, it subverted the democratic process. I'll come back to this. Number 2, we need to look to public health officials when we're making public health decisions. And finally, this is something that, following the leadership of leaders in the New York Police Department, NYPD, and as well as the Burlington Police Department, this is something that, according to them, they've said this time and time again, that this saves lives, this reduces crime, and it's the best tool for fighting the opioid epidemic. So in terms of democracy, this article was put on the ballot by the Select Board after residents failed to get enough signatures to get this on the ballot. So the Select Board has subverted the democratic process, and they've done this on other articles as well, and we'll talk about this in a moment, I think. But when the Select Board doesn't get, when a majority, so that's 3 out of 5, don't get what they want, they're putting those articles to the voters, subverting the processes that we have established. There's a certain number of votes that you need to get in order to get an article on the ballot, and that failed. They didn't get enough votes, so enough signatures. So we shouldn't be voting on this. That's the first thing. And then in terms of the issue of public health, I worked for years in federally qualified health centers, in multiple health centers, and I got a chance to visit an overdose prevention center, and I'll tell you, I didn't see any needles on the street anywhere in that community, and I didn't see anybody shooting up. And I don't want to find any more needles in my yard when I'm mowing the lawn.
Thank you. Franz.
I'm against an overdose prevention center or safe injection site in Brattleboro. Before I went to medical school, I got a degree in public health from the University of Massachusetts and learned that there are 3 levels of prevention that we need to work on in public health matters: primary, secondary, and tertiary. And an overdose prevention center would classify as tertiary prevention. It could prevent some overdoses and some resulting deaths from that. The statistics on that are very hard to interpret. People may want to tell you that, oh, it shows this or oh, it shows that. I'm here to tell you that it doesn't show much. The research is very weak. It's in settings that are totally dissimilar to Brattleboro. I don't think you can draw any conclusions from that. What I want to focus on is primary prevention, not preventing just deaths in a situation where someone is injecting dangerous substances into their veins. I want to prevent people from starting on that habit. And I think an overdose prevention center works contrary to the primary prevention that will truly save lives in our community.
Thank you. Not yet. Amanda.
I appreciate everyone's comments on this. It's been really helpful to learn. So for 3.5 years before COVID, I worked in Greenfield, Massachusetts as a community mental health outpatient therapist. And I worked with a lot of people who were in recovery from opiates. To my knowledge, Greenfield does not have an overdose prevention center at this point, though it could have been a place that it would really benefit from. What we did have working in Greenfield was the state of Massachusetts, with copious amounts of rehabilitative service network within Western Massachusetts, the entire state of Massachusetts, which came from that really great tax base that the state of Massachusetts has. Mass Health was an amazing thing that served a lot of people. The bulwark and the structure of making an overdose prevention center possibly successful is emergency services, rehabilitative services, round works of supporting people to make a life possible after opiates. It can't just be an overdose prevention center. I'll stop there.
Thank you. Oscar, you're up.
Thank you. Well, I think we're actually at a really fortunate moment and place here in Brattleboro, because if we look at the evolution of this law that we are considering and voting on, it originally and controversially had some plans to possibly place a pilot program in Brattleboro. The reason that there is no more local vote in the law about whether there should be one in Brattleboro is because the law no longer contains a provision for Brattleboro. The law is just to establish a pilot program in Burlington. I think this gives us a really great opportunity, which is we don't have to look at studies that take place in big cities or in different states with different laws. We are going to witness a 3-year pilot program on how well this works in a Vermont city 2.5 hours down the road. And this is something where we can come back in 3 years with real information and make a decision. And if Burlington says, my God, it was a disaster, we barely made a dent in overdose deaths, crime went up, it went over budget, no thank you, that's information we'll have in 3 years. And if Burlington says, wow, it was incredible. We saw a 30% reduction in overdose deaths. We saw a 15% reduction in police call volume, and we saved $1 million on top of our projections. That's information that we can use in 3 years to make a real decision. Thank you.
Jill.
So I'm the one who collected the petition signatures and brought this to the Select Board. I could answer the question, but I feel like I could also answer some of the misstatements that are said. Amelia, which would you like me to do?
It's up to you how to use your time.
So Isaac was saying that somehow the Select Board has subverted the process. The town charter is very clear, if you go to read it, that there are 2 ways to get things onto the ballot. One way is to go to the Select Board and ask them to consider putting something on the ballot. The second way is to get signatures. So I went to the Select Board first, and then they encouraged me to also go get some signatures. We had very little time because of the deadline. The reason that we had very little time to get a lot of signatures was, I started it late, but the reason we started it late was that we kept hearing different things. And what Isaac says right now is not also my interpretation and the interpretation of many people I've spoken to, including Nader Hashim. The law that was passed does include funding for Burlington, Vermont. The law did discuss, when they were putting it together, putting something in southern Vermont, which would be Bennington or Brattleboro. That's it. And then they did change to only do Burlington. But the law establishes how to make an overdose prevention center, and it allows a needle exchange site to become an overdose prevention center or safe injection site, which we do have in Brattleboro.
Thanks, Jill. Tim.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Jill, not to engage directly, sorry about that. But I was concerned about the implication that the Select Board wasn't doing something properly, and indeed they were. That is one of the ways that ballot measures get on our ballots. My response to the actual question, which was about whether I'm in favor of a safe injection site or OPC, is no. I don't believe there is any way that injecting a dangerous, illegal, federally illegal substance is safe. So I think it's an oxymoron in itself. I think if one were to spend state, federal, or even local money on such a measure, it should be put into recovery. And we have wonderful ways to support that, should the voters choose to do that in the future. And it's certainly not an experiment that a town of 12,000 should be conducting. And just to say one more thing, since I have a little time, I liked what Oscar said about the study around happening in Vermont. There's also a national study that kicked off, I think, 2 years ago. It should be completed in 2027, and that's looking at the only current existing safe injection sites, so to speak, that are in existence right now. So the answer is no.
Thank you. Just a reminder how the rebuttal will work. If you would like to speak, you just indicate you would. I know Isaac's waiting to speak. If you have a question for one of the other candidates, you can reserve your time and just address a question. But this is to be kept civil. So a reminder, it's 60 seconds for your response. And then if someone wants to respond to Isaac, you can just raise your hand. And I see Amanda has raised her hand. Go ahead, Isaac.
I want to respond to Jill to clarify that I did not say that it was illegal what the Select Board did. I said it undermined the democratic process because there are two ways you can do it. One is the Select Board can put an article on the ballot. The other way is that any resident can get enough petition signatures, like Christina did for overturning the ordinance, right? So she did that. She got all the signatures. In this case, the signatures were not collected. They did not meet that threshold. And so the Select Board just went ahead and put it on there. So I see that as a violation of the way that we usually do things. And to see that in multiple instances is concerning to me. And just also to clarify, there's nothing about Southern Vermont in the law that was passed in the legislature. I reviewed the law, and I believe that the divisiveness is actually by putting this article on the ballot. Thank you.
Amanda.
I'll comment to what Isaac ended on, which was, I think it's always important for the voters of any community to get to speak their opinion. It could very well be a yes from Brattleboro, depending on how our voters vote if the time came, or it could be a no. It's fair for everyone to have an opportunity to express their opinion. Secondly, this is a shout out to my public health friends who talk about overdose prevention centers as low barrier of entry, harm reduction strategy, okay? So I just don't think we are ready with a town, I've heard this echoed through other folks, of 12,100 people to be able to support individuals that start their journey through those measures.
Thank you. Christina.
I just want to say that OPCs are only successful if a community supports them, and that it would be a shame to have this evening televised with all of you people here and to not just connect something that is important about OPCs. I'm not saying that I'm in favor or against, but information is key. And when I heard about OPCs, it was like, yeah, why would a place where someone can go inject drugs in them help with drug use? And so what I learned is that it's a place where people can build trusting relationships with people who can connect them to health promoting services. And that's how they end up saving lives. And apparently over time, the same folks who arrived for a safer place to inject drugs end up developing health promoting behaviors themselves. And it is a way that they can get sober.
Tim.
Reiterate one more time that I don't think it's fair for you to say there was a subversion of democracy. I think that was your words, subversion of democracy. When Jill came to the Select Board, asked for this, for them to consider it, regardless of whether petition signatures were gathered, they were performing their democracy by answering that request from a citizen. So there was no subversion. They did their jobs.
Jill.
One other point I didn't really get into in the beginning, but in my research and my looking into whether overdose prevention centers are successful and save lives is it shows extraordinary funds. One study said up to $1 million to save one life. Is one life worth $1 million is another question. But we had limited funds, for example, coming from the opioid settlement, and the advisory committee was looking at that. And to spend on something that in Canada has been established, but is now being very much a hot topic that's being voted upon, just doesn't seem like a realistic way to spend money here. We in the state have very little recovery. And the other thing that people find in my research at looking at it is it's not just being used for opioids, but for any types of drugs.
Thank you. Franz?
Thanks, Amelia. You know, Christina brought up some points about how effective overdose prevention centers might be, and some reasons why that might be true. Unfortunately, at this point, those are just might be's. There is not a basis of evidence that in a community like Brattleboro that it would actually accomplish those things. And the number of lives saved, I mean, if you do that calculation, not in terms of dollars, but in terms of probabilities, there is actually a much, much lower chance than you might think of it actually working to save someone's life. But the main thing I want to say is that I take offense at a statement that the Select Board did something improper by listening to a lot of people and putting something on the ballot for everyone's consideration. To say that is a subversion of democracy, to me, is just wrong. And I think what we did on the Select Board was the exact right thing.
Thank you all. If there are no other rebuttals, we'll move on to the next question. Seeing none, I'll read the next question. Last year, the people of Brattleboro engaged in vigorous work to improve safety downtown. A community conduct ordinance came of that effort in the fall, but it was rescinded in December at a special representative town meeting. What is your view on the ordinance, and how might you address downtown safety? Here comes the bucket. Amanda.
Thank you. Will you remind me how many minutes I have?
You have the 90 seconds.
90 seconds. Okay, so I was able to be on Representative Town Meeting, the special one, and I stood in support to not rescind the ordinance. And that's because I thought we had to start somewhere. I also learned actually from a lot of the speakers at the forum that we actually have there are criminal charges that are on the books already. And the idea of a civil fine for individuals was attractive to me, because the consequences of having a criminal charge on your record, as we all know, is really harmful. It's hard to get a job. It's hard to, it's difficult. So I thought it wasn't a bad idea in principle. I respect Christina for, standing up and saying this is not going to work. I did not see it as criminalizing homelessness. I saw it as a way for people to be accountable for behaviors that are kind of, I hate that word, not acceptable, but behaviors that are disrupting anyone else who's doing their everyday thing in Brattleboro. Accountability is a big thing for me. I've raised 3 children, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Christina.
I was hoping it wasn't going to be me next. Well, if you aren't sick of hearing what I think about the acceptable community conduct ordinance, here we go. I didn't think that was going to be your question. I thought it was going to be the article, and that is going to be for everyone's vote on March 4th, asking if we want the Select Board to enact an ordinance that outlines what is acceptable and unacceptable behavior in our town. And I thought about how, this is where the nuances come in. That, sure, that sounds great. Let's have a civil charge so that people don't have problems getting a job in the future. Yeah, we really need to dig into some details about that, because for one, the fact that there are civil charges means that the way the ordinance was written, it would have all gone through the town manager's office. The town manager is the person who manages our entire town. We are currently missing 2 department heads, and the town manager has a huge job to do, not just facilitating civil charges. But I also was thinking about how acceptable behavior, could we possibly write an ordinance that prohibits folks from videotaping others without their permission in their worst moments of their life and putting it on the internet without their permission? Is that acceptable community conduct? Can we write an ordinance banning that in our town? Probably that would infringe on someone's constitutional rights, and that's why we can't write that ordinance. So as we're looking forward to what behaviors we can prohibit and not prohibit, we really need to make sure that we're not infringing on people's constitutional rights, because they don't.
Yeah. We'll come back during rebuttal if you need to speak more. Isaac, you're up.
As my team has been knocking on doors around Brattleboro, we keep on hearing concerns about safety. And we also, and I would say this is even the bigger concern, are hearing concerns about people walking downtown and being asked for money. And I sometimes feel uncomfortable with that too. And I will be honest that growing up in this community, I think I probably felt safer as a teenager walking around Brattleboro at night than sometimes I have felt in recent years. So we do need action, and I agree with Amanda that we have to start somewhere. I just believe that we need to start somewhere that actually works, somewhere where we have evidence that this policy has some chance. The community conduct ordinance, there were two parts of it. There was the downtown behavior part, which was challenging because it didn't have the buy-in from social service providers whose services were being named in the ordinance. And then the other part was this high response properties piece, which I think we're going to get to. But that's been proven to actually decrease calls to the police because people are afraid to call the police when you're finding the landlords. So it has this perverse effect. And I just spoke about this with Chief Norma Hardy, the police chief, that about this data from all these states that have actually made it illegal to have this sort of ordinance. So that's why I voted to overturn the ordinance.
Thank you. And I just want to remind you, this was a two-part question. So there was a part about how did you view the ordinance, but there is a part about how would you address downtown safety. So I know it's not much time, but we're really looking for where do we go from here. Okay, Oscar.
Oh, great. Well, it's an important question. I am a town meeting rep. I was at the special town meeting, and when I sat down to start it, my feeling was very much, I'm 55-45 skeptical on this. I'm not sure this is the right thing. And then over the course of the discussion, I was reminded by various speakers of the different individual problems I had with the ordinance that over time added up to me at the end voting to overturn it. The unfortunate reality was that that was the only action we could take, was to vote yes or no, up or down on the ordinance. We couldn't amend it. We couldn't try to make it better. And for me, the half about high response rate properties was problematic enough that I wasn't happy having the ordinance on the books. To quickly get to the second part of the question, I think we are actually making great strides in terms of much more tangible things regarding downtown safety right now. The funding for the BRAT team and the police substation downtown are direct actions that the Select Board has taken that nobody has overturned, that are designed to address concerns that people felt about safety downtown. Those were barely into the first couple months on that. So I think all we need to do is watch and wait and see how this next year goes. And the unfortunate reality, I think, for Brattleboro is that we can't make these huge investments often. We don't have those kinds of resources. So we've just made a big one. Let's see how it plays out and go from there. I think we're on the right track. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard, you're up.
When the safety issue first started to boil up, the Select Board and Chief Hardy Police Department, we came together and everybody talked and developed a plan. I think it's a sound plan, but the ordinance was sort of added on to this and became part of the plan. I voted against it, not because I had issues with the actual content of the ordinance, but because I felt it was a little bit of it was premature and sort of overkill in a sense that I felt, let's see what happens with these other measures that we have in place. You get the Brat team, they want to relocate a satellite police department downtown, and they've added a few more police officers. That's a lot of new stuff for Brattleboro, and I really believe that that would probably push us in the right direction, and that's exactly what happened. Everybody I've talked to so far that engages in downtown activities feels a little bit safer now. I think we've seen results. I still think we don't need to implement that ordinance right now. We can hold it off, but maybe if things don't improve and they don't get better, especially with the warm weather, because I think that's going to be a real test, then maybe we need another measure. And I don't know if it's the ordinance or not. It may be something else.
Thank you. Jill?
So for the first half of the question, yes, I voted. I was elected in, and I was one of the representative town meeting people that said, yes, let's leave it. It was a convoluted question. So yes, I supported the ordinance. The ordinance is not perfect. It had the ability to be changed. I felt we needed to start somewhere. Personally, have a daughter that was going to CCV the last 2 years who was chased by people and had to run into a store to get away. I've had personal experience at Community House with a lot of crime, a lot of things that I don't think I want to go into right here, but the downtown situation is untenable the way it was. And I felt that we were in a crisis situation, and if that was one way to go at it, let's try it. How to go forward? I think we're doing a bunch of things, as the select board members that are on here are saying. We've put social workers embedded with the police. There's 4 of them now started. We've put on 3 more police that are in this year's budget as well. We've changed to the downtown police station and the presence there. The One Brattleboro attempt to pull in the nonprofits and start to work together more. I think we need to look at zoning when we are approving all of these housing units and the expansion of something like the Dalem Chalet. Where's the safety plan as a part of that? And then I think we also need to talk about the Massachusetts law that's starting in July that says that anyone who has a felony conviction can no longer go into the shelters in Massachusetts, and be prepared for whether they want to come up here.
Thank you. Tim?
Thank you. I was in support of the ordinance. I've served on the select board long enough to know that it's quite easy to modify if some of those concerns of the folks that convinced RTM to vote against it came true. It would be easy to modify. Unlike another candidate here, I don't have a team. I have a family. I have a 7-year-old who I walk around and interact downtown all the time. And I think community conduct, even though I initially didn't really like the name, it's kind of weird, but when you think of it, civil society depends on some real agreements amongst citizens that they will behave kindly to each other, that they will be good citizens. And so that's all that the select board, I think, was trying to do, and I did vote for it. And if I'm elected to the select board, I will work with the new board to bring this back to the board, and we'll take a look at everything again, and we'll see if we can pass it once again.
Thank you. We still have one more, and that's Franz.
Thanks, Amelia. So I voted in favor of the ordinance and maintaining the ordinance. I spoke at the special representative town meeting in favor of the ordinance. But I think it's true. People say, well, this isn't necessary. This stuff is already against the law. And that's true. The types of behavior in the ordinance, and I urge everyone to read it, those are things that are truly unacceptable. That's why it's called the acceptable conduct ordinance. And we can't afford, on a cultural, social, economic level, to have those things happening on a regular basis downtown. And that's what the ordinance said. Further, the ordinance decriminalized those things, took it out of the criminal statutes and put it in the civil statutes, which does give it more flexibility in terms of enforcement. And the ordinance required that the first thing you do to enforce any of its components is you have to have a conversation. That whether it's a Brad officer or police officer or whoever it is, the first thing they're required to do by the ordinance is talk to the person. And then you have to give them a chance to change their behavior. So this really was a decriminalizing ordinance, and I think it's an important part of our program.
Thank you. All right, we'll begin the rebuttal. Christina.
Thank you. So if that ordinance truly does not target homeless people, then we all have to make sure that we are standing up for our constitutional rights. Because that ordinance, if it doesn't target homeless people, the way it was written, and this is way worse than, oh no, we need a second draft, the way it was written means that if you do not behave in a way that any town staff employee wants you, or I'm sorry, I should say that differently. If you behave in a way that a town staff employee does not approve of, you lose access to public property indefinitely with no appeal rights besides the actual office that gave you the ticket in the first place. So that means that any town staff who does not like your behavior can kick you out of public property forever. So if it truly doesn't target homeless people, then we all should have a problem with this ordinance.
Isaac?
Russell said that I have a team and he has a family. Just wanted to clarify that my family is right here. That's Derek right here, my father, Doug France over here, and mom, Laura Evans right here. Thank you.
Tim?
I did not mean to imply that you did not have a family, so.
Amanda?
Ran in a race this summer in the Democratic primary for representative for District 7. And I had a lot of groups that I got together to talk with me about what was important to them. And one of the groups was high school students and newly graduated high school students. And what they asked of me, they said, we want to see more accountability in our town and actually in our school. And we're frustrated by that. And so when I think about that idea of accountability and being able to say, I made a mistake, and that includes my kid. If my kid was at a bar and was like getting into a fight with somebody on the street, certainly they should get a ticket. Absolutely, they're not immune. It's everybody. We're all accountable to one another.
Anyone else on this topic? All right, we'll move on then. Question number 3 has multiple parts and has some figures in it, so pay attention. The Brattleboro Police Department responded to over 13,000 calls in 2024. Of those, nearly 1,200 were located in 6 high-call locations, costing the town of Brattleboro, just for those locations, $544,000 in services rendered by the police. Part of the rescinded ordinance allowed the town to recoup some of that expense from property owners of such high-volume locations. Would you be in favor of the Select Board revisiting this type of ordinance in 2025 and allowing the town to recoup compensation from these property owners? Everyone clear on the question? All right. Isaac, you're up first. I see an expression that indicates maybe you'd like me to read it again?
That would be great. Thanks.
Okay. The Brattleboro Police Department responded to over 13,000 calls in 2024. Of those, nearly 1,200 were to high call volume locations, costing the town of Brattleboro, just for those locations, $544,000 in services rendered. Part of the rescinded ordinance allowed the town to recoup some of that expense from the property owners of those high call volume locations. So the question is, would you be in favor of the Select Board revisiting this type of ordinance, particularly that component to the ordinance, in 2025, and allowing the town to recoup compensation from the property owners.
No, I would not be in favor of revisiting that sort of ordinance, but I would be in favor of us working closely with the state legislature. I've already been speaking with Representative Ian Goodnow and other property owners, residents, neighbors, and tenants about how we can change state policy to make it easier to remove drug trafficking from our community. Because what we are seeing is that there is a situation where traffickers are coming in or sending people into our community who are displacing residents who are vulnerable, and it's causing problems and violence for our community. And that's why we've seen these increase in burglaries and assaults and other violence. So what we need to do is to make sure that everybody has the right and the tools that they need to live comfortably and safely, because I'm hearing stories I'm talking to the police chief, talking to the assistant police chief, talking to the town manager, talking to the assistant town manager, and talking to a lot of other people, everyday people around our town. Folks in various neighborhoods, and I can see some of you who've been involved in coming together to get rid of some of the trafficking, but we need tools to make it easier to get rid of the visitors who are coming in who are bringing all these problems. Thank you.
Okay, and really this was focused on budget and recouping costs, so Christina. No.
Okay.
Christina.
My understanding was that the ordinance for the high response property was not to recoup costs. It was to gain leverage over these property owners, to enter into conversation with the town, to make a plan, a management plan, to address the actual issues. And my issue with this part of the ordinance was that it was also infringing on people's constitutional rights to call the police. Vermont state courts have already decided that calling the police is constitutionally protected, and that any ordinance that chills that right is unconstitutional. And considering that there's 6 locations, we already know what those locations are, and our town can already enter into conversations with those locations. We do not need to cast such a wide net that half of our residents now don't have equal access to calling the police. That puts me as a parent in a very uncomfortable position when my daughter wants to go to someone's house, and I know that might be a place where they are not free to call the police because they might face eviction if anyone calls the police for any reason. I'll stop now.
Thank you. Oscar.
That this half of the ordinance would have been enough for me on its own to vote to overturn the whole thing. So the ordinance as written, I had big problems with. That said, the problem we're talking about here is very real, and we need to find a solution. The reason I was hesitant about the ordinance, and the reason I think we have to be incredibly careful about anything we do that deals with landlords and tenants, is I am a landlord now on Elliott Street, but a few years ago I was a renter and was my whole life. And maybe I'm cynical, but it's very easy for any interaction between the government and a landlord to reverberate out to that landlord's tenants. That's basically what we're talking about here. That a landlord would make it clear to their tenants, hey, if you call the police, if you cause a problem for me, that's not gonna be good for you. And I have no trouble imagining that happening. I've experienced landlords in the past who were very comfortable saying, I hold the practical power in this relationship, and things are going to go the way I want. So that is my real worry with anything on this topic. That said, I'm sure we can find the right tool out there, and I want to be a part of doing that. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard.
I don't see how an ordinance like this is going to recover any significant amount of money relating to $444,000. So I think that's very unrealistic to assume that it's going to cover any cost of significance. And I don't think it's very fair to put the burden on property owners because, well, I sort of have mixed feelings in a way. One part of it is that the property owners, you know, they try their best to find good tenants and get the people in there that they want, but no system of screening people is foolproof, and it's impossible for, I think, for most property owners to know that so-and-so is going to get in there and in a month open up a drug dealing operation, you know? So to blame them for that, I have a lot of trouble with that. And from what I've heard from most people in town, we have some extremely responsible property owners, and the number of bad landlords is pretty low, and there are other mechanisms in place to keep bad landlords from doing bad things. And I don't think this ordinance is really going to do much to solve a very, very complex drug problem.
Thank you. Amanda?
Thank you. I appreciate what everyone had to say. I'm going to come at it from a different angle. We have a special situation in Brattleboro, and it's similar to one in Bennington and Rutland and White River Junction and Burlington. And that is that we were hub towns that were recipients of the emergency motel housing program that the state said, you guys can do it. You have motels. The state did not provide, they laid an egg in terms of giving us any revenue that could have gone into helping our emergency services, helping our police department, helping our social work agencies. Absolutely zero. So now we have a situation that happened in April, and our motel program ended. And there are a lot of needy people in our community, and we have no resources within our town budget right now to do what we need to do to support these people. So I'm coming at it from that angle. The other angle is, that was the hotel residents that had the multiple calls. So there's more than 6. I mean, it was 6, but anyway. The other thing is that if we're going to do any housing program that is, I'm going to say permanent supportive housing, I think it's a good idea for in their budget line item to provide something for the town to fund emergency services. If you have a high need community, it could be a small gesture, but something that says, I recognize that we get a lot of calls and the town needs to be paid back, easing the burden on the taxpayers.
Thank you. Jill?
Could you just repeat the question?
Sure. The Brattleboro Police Department responded to over 13,000 calls in 2024. Of those, nearly 1,200 were to 6 high-call locations, costing the town of Brattleboro, just for those locations, $544,000 in services rendered. Part of the rescinded ordinance allowed the town to recoup some of that expense from property owners of such locations. Would you be in favor of the Select Board revisiting this type of ordinance in 2025 and allowing the town to recoup compensation from those property owners?
So this is a yes/no question, and my answer is yes. It's $544,000. What Amanda's saying is exactly right. Those are the motel properties. The state was paying the motel owners to have those folks there. And my understanding is there's about $45,000 that came into the budget last year, or came into revenues from the other hotel properties. So it's all of the other ones. So it's a very large difference. Right now, if at Community House we have a child that pulls the fire alarm, too many times we get charged by the fire department because we're calling the fire department out to come and use their time to come help us. We have to control the child from pulling the fire alarm. So I don't see this as a huge issue. If your property is calling and using for a lot of services, then yes, the town has the right to go back and say, yes, you're using a lot of our services. And the other part too, what Amanda alluded to, is the zoning, which is what I said too, and the safety. We need to look at that. When we're putting in housing that might be high need, there needs to be a line item in there that says, okay, so what's your plan? What are you going to do for safety? How are we going to make sure that this is not an excessive burden on us? I beat the red card.
Franz?
Well, I agree with everything that everyone said. And there were a lot of good points made. To me, this was clearly the weaker half of the ordinance. And I don't think I fully appreciated at the time some of its implications. I kind of looked at it from the vantage point of, well, how is our town going to enact this in practice? And I think there were good ways to do that as the ordinance was written, but as it's been discussed more, I've come to also realize that there might be some untoward effects, things that we want to avoid. Certainly the idea that somebody can't call the police under any circumstances, you know, that's intolerable. You know, when you need help, that's the last resort. You've got to be able to call the police and ask for help. And there shouldn't be anything that inhibits that. So I agree with that. I don't think there's anything in the ordinance that's actually unconstitutional, but I think the practical effects were open to question. Should the Select Board revisit it? Well, that depends on what you mean by revisit. Should we think about it some more? I've got no problem with that. I don't think it's in a condition right now that we would reenact something that's more or less exactly what was repealed at town meeting.
Thank you. Thank you. Does anyone have any rebuttal to these? You've all made great points. Jill?
Just had a question. Franz, you were just saying that there was no, in the ordinance as it was, that you can't call the police for any time, for any reason. I thought that domestic violence was excluded, that those calls were able to be done.
It was a question I heard from Jill, and you can respond to that.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. I may not have said that the way I intended it to be. What I mean is that whether it's domestic violence or anything else, you should be able to call the police when you need to. Certainly, I mean, from a constitutional standpoint, the domestic violence has been legally separated out. That it's actually, I don't know if constitutional, but legally, you can't enact an ordinance that makes there be any penalty for calling the police in response to a domestic violence incident. And that was made explicit in the language of the ordinance, that was not included in among the reasons that action would be taken against the property owner. That was already taken out of it. What I'm saying is there shouldn't be any reason that a citizen or person in the community feels reluctance to get in touch with the police when they need to.
Tim?
Not sure, but did I have a chance to answer this question?
You can answer as part of your rebuttal. You have
No, I
6
mean, I don't think I answered the original. I didn't have a
you
turn.
didn't go?
No.
Oh, my apologies.
It's okay.
I thought you did.
I'll go quick. I'll go quick.
No, you have
I
your
just had a
time.
couple thoughts, very quickly. This reminds me of the time, I sound like an old man there. When I was on the board, we had a lot of controversy because the board went ahead and pushed for and enacted, I'm looking at Liz because she was with me at that time, a fire inspection program. And the landlords didn't like it. There was a lot of complaining about it, but it turns out that it was a really great program. It protects renters, and it makes the landlords pay for it. It's not a huge cost. They were able to easily roll it into their yearly costs. But it reminds me of this because you need a certain level of, I don't want to say acceptable safety, but you need a certain level of requirements that landlords need to comply to. And this is similar because this ordinance was obviously designed to go after those irresponsible sites that are costing the town a little money, like Jill mentioned, when there's a lot of pulls of that fire alarm, the landlord, the tenants do get billed for that. So I just wanted to point out that it's similar to that. It's something that we should revisit again. Whether or not it's perfect is up to our very talented town attorney. Often people speak about these things as if the select board is pulling out things from their back pocket. No, these are properly vetted by our very talented town attorney, and people should remember that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak on this topic? All right. I'll just let you know that we're about 45 minutes from the end of the program tonight. We still have 2 more questions, so I think we're on track. So we'll move on to question 4. moving squarely into budget. In its budget, the town of Brattleboro supports many local human service organizations, in addition to its other budget items. What is your position on 2% of the fiscal year 25 general fund budget of nearly, so 2% would be $500,000, directed for human services funding in fiscal year 2026? And first of you, if you need me to repeat it, let me know. Jill.
Wow. Okay, so I guess the first thing I want to say is that I'm not a fan of the way this is worded, the idea that it's the human services budget, and then I hear people saying that, well, that's all the town spends, and if we can spend so much on sidewalks and so much, I'm going to sneeze, sorry, we should be able to spend on people. Sorry. So we really do actually spend on other things, and that, to me, are truly part of the human services budget. We are spending on the BRAT team that has now just come into place. Those are social workers that are actually within our budget. We have 3 new police officers. We have fire department staff, EMS staff that are going out and helping with social calls, Narcan and overdose situations. So we're spending a lot more money than just what people call the human services portion of the budget. The human services portion of the budget I'd rather call donations, which is really what it is. I'm also frustrated by the people in town that say, well, that we don't have any control over that, we don't have any process for that. We do. We have a whole committee. People spend a lot of time, and I thank them for that time because it's not an easy job, I'm sure, to see the good work that's being done. I'm done. I'm red card.
Okay. All right, Tim.
Thank you. So all of the organizations that are funded, or of course partially funded by the human services line item every year, are absolutely doing an amazing job, and the committee does an amazing job deciding the limited amount of funds that go to which and for which reasons. It's a really hard job to serve on that committee because it's always going to be limited no matter what RTM sets the funding at. But for years I have been sounding the alarm that the amount is too high. In 2018 it was $128,000. If you do the math, even with 2018 overall budget, that came to less than half of 1%. So, and then around 2020, 2021, we meaning RTM, came up with the idea of doing a percentage of the previous year's budget. Pretty good solution, but I objected when it got to be over 1%. So my feeling now is that we're hearing from our community that $500,000 or pushing $500,000 is too much for whatever you'd like to call it, because these organizations are not absolutely dependent on the town's contribution. They are part of the matrix of how they fund themselves. I would be in favor of putting forward the idea of 1% and capping it at 1%.
Thank you. Richard.
Visit the way we look at the human service funding in Brattleboro. Most of the towns in Vermont have either eliminated this from their town budget or decreased it severely. And I did a little rough calculation, it's an unofficial number, but roughly the average person in Brattleboro with this $400,000 appropriation would pay about $100 a year in taxes to support this $400,000 plus human service budget. Every organization is critical to the functioning of this community, and I don't want to deny them the ability to operate, but this is a classic example of we want to do the right thing, but how do we balance that against people's ability to afford to do the right thing? And do we have to cut this because this family is thinking of moving out of town, because this has just pushed them right over the edge? I've started 3 nonprofits, and I've worked for 46 years in the human service area. I have a pretty good understanding of how these things work. And I think Tim just said it, I don't think they're going to go out of business because we cut their funding. It'll be a little harder, but they can do it. On the other hand, about a few weeks ago, the whole climate has changed from the national perspective, and we're going to get screwed by the federal government. So maybe we have to take that into consideration, too. This is a whole new development, and it's very scary. I don't know what the answer is, but if we have an ordinance and the town votes on it, I mean, something on the warning, and we vote, I'd like to hear what people think.
Amanda?
Yes, yeah, a really important topic. I appreciated the commentary in the Commons today. I don't know if anybody read that from the Human Services Committee. That was really well written and very clear, articulating the needs in our community, the services that are rendered. Right now, we don't have a structure in our community in Brattleboro to provide the same services that our nonprofits provide for within our town government, and it would be a lot more expensive if it was through our town government. So I want to validate our human service agencies, but budgets are tight sometimes, and what you want to do and what you believe in doing sometimes requires a little bit of a compromise. I do think this year, for where our budget's at, we need to have open conversations, not vitriolic shaming conversations about the fact that people are having a hard time affording living here. Most especially, I think of our retired community that has a fixed income, and that we could adjust that. So my vote would be to adjust it down to 1.4 or 1% for the human service budget.
Thank you. Christina?
Thank you. The amount that the human services receive each year is decided by RTM, Representative Town Meeting, not the Select Board. In fact, in 1973, state law specified that the amount cannot be determined by town staff or the Select Board, and it must be determined by town meeting. So I feel like this topic is a little bit in the wrong debate, but because Select Board members are ex officio RTM members, I'll answer it. And as an RTM member, I go door to door to my neighbors, and I present them with some knowledge, some facts, some information, and I have a conversation with them, and I say, how would you like me to vote at representative town meeting? And I lay it out for them, and that is how I vote on the human service budget as a town meeting rep. But just so you know, don't come to the Select Board with your concerns, questions, or any other things that have to do with the human service budget. Contact your town meeting rep.
Franz?
Thank you. Hey, that's what I think too. In fact, I think there's no right answer to this. The amount that should be distributed to human service agencies, I think, is up to the people of the town. And that can be made apparent through town meeting reps, as Christina just said, or through the ballot question that the Select Board authorized to ask people, how much do you think should be in the budget? But however that goes, it has very little to do with the Select Board. If you look at the process, we've got this almost, well, call it a hybrid, I don't know, but at town meeting, the representatives tell the Select Board, we want you to put the following amount or the following percentage into the warning for next year's town meeting so that town meeting can put it into the following year's budget according to the way that it's distributed by the Human Services Committee. It's this very complex mechanism, but basically it's town meeting telling the Select Board to put something in the warning so that town meeting can then change it the next year, which is basically what has happened. Somebody stands up and says, no, that's not enough, it's got to be more, or that's too much, it's got to be less. It's really up to town meeting, and it's really up to the voters to tell town meeting on the ballot on March 4th, get out and vote and tell them, us, you know, what you want to see for the human services budget.
Thank you. Oscar?
I'm going to end this answer by explaining why I personally am proud that we fund human services in the way that we do, but I want to say at the top, I'm the chair of the Finance Committee this year. We have been staring down the barrel of a budget crisis for 6 months, and I'm expecting that we will see another one when the next budget comes out in September, that we're going to have a lot of the same problems to grapple with. So I am completely comfortable, despite my own personal feelings, about having the conversation of what we want to do with this number. If this is something that in a time of crisis and real financial need that we feel we want to temporarily reduce. So the thing I feel strongly about is that that should be part of a general conversation about everything in the budget. I think the human services budget is an easy thing to look at because it's a nice big round number and it's hard to see the effects if we cut it. But what we really need to have in this town, and I think have been lacking for a couple years, is a really robust community budgeting process where we talk seriously about what do we need, what do we want, what are we willing to pay for. That's the conversation that needs to happen. Human services is a small part of that. In fact, it's 2% of that, but it absolutely should be part of that conversation. The red card is here, so I'm just going to say that I am proud that we fund and look at our problems from the human services angle as well as the policing angle and the other things that we do. That makes me feel good about our town. Thank you.
Thank you. And Isaac.
In this room has served on the Human Services Committee. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Dad, for your service. I know you have a rubric and you have a careful process by which you go through this, and I'm grateful for the organizations that are on there, like the Brattleboro Center for Children, Senior Meals, Women's Freedom Center, Hospice, The Root, where Derek works, and all the organizations that are doing such important work in our community. This represents 2% of our budget. 65% of our budget is personnel. The Select Board refused to follow the recommendations of the Representative Town Meeting Finance Committee, which serves an advisory function to Representative Town Meeting, but makes sense to listen to them, I think, have a collaborative approach, refused to do what they asked, which is to consider just looking at that 65% of the budget that's personnel, and where might there be opportunities to cut. Some of those positions have not been filled. Some of them have not even, that are new positions. And so when we're looking at the budget, we should be looking at the whole budget and not just cherry picking the 2% that's for human services. Finally, I'm concerned about the audit report, and that's time. I look forward to talking with you about it after this if you want to stay. I'll be glad to stay till the last person leaves.
So this is the rebuttal period, and you remember the question. So Amanda, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I want to say that I too, I want to echo what Oscar said. I'm really proud that Brattleboro has always been a caring community. I tried to look back at how long the human services funding existed in our budget. I can see it as far back as 2005. So as a lot of people were here, raise your hand if you were here in 2005. So, and that is important, who we are. And I think of organizations that were places where I volunteered with my kids, Loaves and Fishes, the Overflow Shelter in the Baptist Church. And, at that time, things have changed. We have fentanyl in our community, and I think people feel less confident being able to help. But I'd love to reinvigorate that so we can fund our more institution agencies, but also that we come together to really help people out.
Anyone else want to weigh in? Christina.
Say that I know the topic is the 2% and the human services budget, but really the question that we have to ask if we keep the big picture in mind is who is going to take care of our sick and our elders and our young when their parents can't actually get paid to work? Who's going to take care of these people in our community? That's really the question that we have to ask and not just zero in on dollar signs. Thank you.
Tim, I think you had your hand up.
I sort of changed my mind, but now I've changed it back. I think I just want to point out, I try to point this out every RTM because people sort of lose the picture a little bit, but it's kind of obvious, but everyone should remember, and I'll say this again, in late March, we will always have an increase unless there is zero increase in the overall budget. When you have your set 1% contributed to this fund, it's always going to go up because our budget is always going to go up a little. So an increase each year is built in, and I think what you're going to find with the vote that's about to happen is that our taxpayers are not happy with the amount of this percentage and the out-of-whack nature it is compared to other towns. We are not a rich community. We can't afford it. We need to cut it down.
Richard.
Anybody who wants to cut personnel from the budget, please go hang out with the highway department, hang out with the police department. Actually meet the people that work for this town. We have an incredibly dedicated, competent group of people who are running a town on, there's not a lot of frills there, probably none. Also consider the fact that there's 151 town employees. Probably all of them are family people. Let's say 2, 3, 4 people, 15 times 4, that's 500 or 600 people. These are all people that go downtown, that shop, that pay taxes also in our community. It's a lot of people's lives that would be affected. Is this where we want to make our cuts? If you want to make the cuts, let's hear about it. I want to know who you want to cut.
Oscar.
Richard, I think you know I have a great deal of respect and fondness for you, so that's where this is coming from. I think there has been reporting, I have seen headlines such as, Finance Committee says cut staff, etc. That's not my personal position. My position is very simply that we all have our own household budgets. If your job changes and you have less money, you need to change what you do. And you can't do that in a short-term way. You have to consciously decide, I'm going to eat out half as much. I'm going to move to a smaller apartment. These are the only ways you can sustainably change the amount you are spending. So I think we have a responsibility to look at everything in the budget. And as other people have made the point, there are very few ways to sustainably decrease our budget if you refuse to consider anything that could impact staff. I have great relationships with a lot of people on town staff too, and I don't doubt their value for a minute, but I think we need to have the conversation, that's all.
Yeah, Jill.
The question was basic. It was about just human services and the amount, but I'm a little sad, I don't know what your last question is, that we're not talking a little bit more about how to impact the entire town's future. There's an auditor said something so simplistic to me that I was like, ha. But he's right, of course. You only can decrease cost or increase revenues or do both if you're looking at a budget crisis. And all we're talking about here is decreasing cost and looking at tightening the belt. I'd like to have more vision and more thought about where we're going and how we can increase revenue and not just be looking at decreasing.
Franz.
In that vein, and relating to something Oscar said, I think questions about the budget process are very important. Specifically, looking into future budgets as far as we can, which is certainly imperfect, but we need to take very serious steps to anticipate our potential budget futures and make allowances for them in our current spending, so that we are not overspending on things that might lead us into budget problems in the future. That's something that I think we've gotten away from, and it needs to be reinstated, and it relates to what Jill was just saying as well. The budget is love made visible, to misquote Khalil Gibran, but it's where you see what we truly value in town, and we need to be looking at that in a much more organized and future-oriented fashion.
I think most of you have rebutted this question, have any of you not had a chance to do so? Jill, I see your hand. You just want to make a brief comment?
Real quickly. Christina.
Oh, I'm
That's
so sorry.
okay.
Christina.
I just wanted to say, and I'm only going to do this because you're an incumbent, Franz, but there was nothing stopping you from reinstating that in the last 3 years. You could have reinstated the long-term planning for the last 3 years, and you didn't do it. Just wanted to point that out.
Very briefly, Franz, we need to move on.
Christina, you aren't in a position to have seen what I advocated for. I don't make decisions on the select board. I offer ideas, and then there's 5 people who make those decisions.
Thank you.
Open meeting law means that I did get to see that.
The next question should bring us toward where Jill, I believe, was headed in her last comment. So I'd like you all to dig deeply now and look ahead. The question is, and we'll take it in turn like we have been, how would you improve safety and services in Brattleboro to create a vibrant downtown and a thriving local economy? And how do you plan to support our local business community and downtown residents impacted by issues with public health and safety downtown? This is a big one. You might need to read that again. I'll gladly read it again. How would you improve safety and services in Brattleboro to create a vibrant downtown and a thriving local economy? And how do you plan to support our local business community and downtown residents impacted by issues with public health and safety downtown? And the first person is Tim.
Okay. Well, I have always held that it is not the responsibility of the town of Brattleboro, capital T, to make sure we're talking about municipal government and what our tax money pays for, to directly support downtown businesses, for instance. We're not a community like Dover. Dover actually directly supports, with tax money, businesses in that town. And it might be appropriate for them. But I am of the opinion that when pulling the Gen X card here again, if you build it, they will come. If you build a welcoming, a safe, a comfortable downtown and rest of Brattleboro, people will want to come here and shop, people will want to live here, and people will want to work here. And that is the role of the Select Board and RTM and town government in general, is to create that atmosphere and that space. And I think the current board did a good job setting us on a path with the Brett team. Chief Hardy, I was on the board that hired Chief Hardy. I'm very proud of the work she does with the BPD. And just the most recent meeting, you saw amazing reports of collaborations through not only the town, but of our vast community social service organizations. So
Thank you.
that's the path we need to take.
Oscar.
That's great. Thank you. I was actually hoping that I would randomly follow you, because I'm going to offer a slightly different approach. What I would actually like to see from the Select Board is a little more in the way of hands-on, sleeves rolled up, practical leadership on this issue. What I have been thinking about the last couple days and discussing with people is that let's take a simple, single economic problem we know we have, which is there are a series of empty storefronts, closed businesses, unrented properties in town. It's a problem and it's visible, but it's finite. It's a relatively small number of opportunities. So what I would like to do is establish a Select Board task force to deal with this, to work on this, with 2 members of the Select Board, representatives from local development agencies like the Chamber of Commerce, the DBA, BDCC, probably a member of the Town Planning Department, and put those places on a list, on a clipboard in pencil, and work through them. Call the building owners. Say, can we support you in some way? Is there a roadblock, something that's keeping you from being able to rent this? Reach out on the other end. Talk to business owners or people who might want to move into a bigger space or people who might need an opportunity or a connection. I think with a little bit of elbow grease, the Select Board could make some really important connections with really not much in the way of resources and money. I think this is an opportunity for elbow grease and really applying ourselves. And the card is waving now, so goodbye.
Isaac.
Well, we have a couple of challenges here. The state has a labor shortage, and we also have a housing shortage, which make it difficult. But I want to talk about 3 people who have done really interesting things that inspired me, and that I think as a select board we can encourage more of this sort of thing. So one is Mr. DeGray, who is my basketball coach in 6th grade. He went around planting all those flowers. You know what I'm talking about, all those flower boxes? I see a lot of nodding heads. You know, bringing that energy, that beauty to our town, just everyday people stepping up and doing what needs to be done to make this a beautiful town. I want to talk about Kaz at the co-op, who is an employee who worked to address the concerns that you brought up around safety and helping this community come together. So there were 4 to 5 shoplifting events every day at the co-op. Now it's down to fewer than 1 a week. And that was because of the relationship building that he did with people in the community who are around and building trust, giving a piece of pizza, some cold water in the summer. You know that cold water cooler by the pedestrian bridge over the Whetstone Brook? So that kind of coming together, that collaborative approach, is something that we need. And then finally, I was talking with Betsy Gentili here, who used to run the Brattleboro Chamber of Commerce, and she reminded me about the program that was the food entrepreneurship program. And I'd love to see other opportunities to connect folks who need a hand and are ready to work and local employers. Thanks.
Thank you. Amanda.
Yeah. Thank you, Betsy, for your service at the Chamber of Commerce. That's so great. Yeah, so I'm kind of off of other folks here. Like mini grants would be great. I'm just kind of feeding off of Oscar's ideas, and like it's just great. I know a lot of young people, because my kids are 25, 22, and 19, who want to come back here, but we don't have good paying jobs, and they don't like all the vitriol that's getting spewed on Facebook back and forth, and they don't like there are barriers. So I want to decrease those barriers. Say, welcome back. Start your small business. Entrepreneurship, food entrepreneurship is a great thing that we can do. And we are so well located. We have 3 exits off I-91. Sky's the limit. We've got New Hampshire, Massachusetts to market products and also bring people in that have dollars to spend. So what I'll say is visioning for a future Brattleboro that's about growth and prosperity. Filling the storefronts is paramount, having a healthy downtown, and hopefully they shout out small businesses like mine in West Brattleboro, because Brattleboro is more than downtown. And I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Richard.
I think most people in town have noticed a difference, and from what I've heard from Chief Hardy, this may be a pretty remarkable turnaround, because other towns are starting to ask her, what are you doing? And we may end up going from being a town where everybody's afraid to walk downtown to a town that becomes a model for all the other towns of Vermont to make their town safer. So we may be on a trajectory. I hope we are. It'll be wonderful. The other thing that I think, obviously, the Downtown Business Alliance does a lot of work trying to attract businesses, and I believe they're doing the best they can, but it's still not enough. It's not even close to enough. We need to attract more businesses to this community, and I don't think there's a magic bullet, but we still have to keep working at it. The other thing that you don't hear often about for improving a community and attracting businesses and people to come here is recreation. If you look at other towns of Vermont, bike trails, they have a variety of recreational opportunities within their towns. That is a big magnet, and I consider recreation as an economic development tool, and it's something we haven't exploited enough, and I think we need to work on it. I worked on the bike past thing, the last year on the board, trying to get something going on that, and I want to continue to do more, because we really haven't done enough.
Thank you. Jill?
So yeah, I'm glad this was the last question, yeah. So I think our first thing is that nobody's going to come downtown, nobody's going to come to Brattleboro, period, if we don't have a safe downtown. So I echo what you're saying, that Richard, that we are working on that. And I think that our budget this year, should it be passed, is really focused on that. So once people are able to come downtown and feel happy about coming downtown, then I think we need to have our budget looking forward in that long-term planning financially, so that we're not putting ourselves behind the 8 ball. And then a laser focus on the downtown, that there shouldn't be empty storefronts, but pull together the people that can help with that, so that there's like the BDCC does a lot of stuff that we don't really hear a lot about them. Amanda and I were just talking with them, the Chamber, the Downtown Business Alliance, pull together all of the people that can help and do that laser focus of no empty storefronts. And go after grants. There was one I was just looking at today, it was up to $50,000. They're mini grants, but they can do something like in your downtown that could be fun and could build the community around it. I have this dream of daffodils all over the place that I've been thinking of for 35 years. I think there's 2 roles for the Select Board. One is to get the best services at a rate we can all afford, and the second is to lead with this vision and to decrease the divisiveness that's been going on in the town. And I think if we're looking and focusing on some future, we aren't spending so much time sniping at each other.
Thank you. Franz, you're up.
Thank you. Downtown is the social, cultural, and economic center of our community. And it's vitally important that we take steps to protect the downtown, almost as if it were a person, but to really look at what is going to build the health and viability of that part of our community. The safety issue is key. We have to have it that people feel comfortable and safe downtown. It doesn't help to lecture people about how they should feel. We have to deal with how people actually do feel and take steps in that direction, which I think we're already doing, as we've discussed earlier. The Downtown Safety Action Plan in particular, I think, is helping with that. We need to support organizations, economic development organizations, which we do, like the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation and the Southeastern Vermont Economic Development Strategies organizations, the Downtown Brattleboro Alliance. We've had excellent work from our planning department on getting our zoning ordinances in better shape, and the planning department looks at other ways that we can attract business and housing development to the town. I think what the Select Board can do is something Oscar was alluding to in terms of providing the networking and the communication. So when you're making your decisions, look for the good communicators up here. There's a lot of work that we can do just by spreading the word. Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, Christina.
When I was talking to so many neighbors, collecting signatures to overturn the acceptable community conduct ordinance, I learned that a lot of residents in Brattleboro do not go downtown, not because they don't feel safe, but because they can't afford it. There's nothing for them to purchase there unless they want a $40 felted fairy ornament. And I mean, actual residents saying, I can't even buy a pair of underwear downtown. And this is a huge issue that I have not heard in the conversation. Even the DBA in their survey of why do you not go downtown, not one option on the list of options was affordability. So I've been thinking, how can we create some affordable restaurants, some affordable goods? If the rents are too high, that won't work. So what can the town do about that? And how maybe there can be any town-owned property could support pop-up shops to start with, and also mini grants to get them going to have a storefront. But yeah, local, affordable businesses. We don't want to live in a tourist trap. We really want to favor our community members over tourists. Thank you.
Thank you. This is now the final rebuttal period. And just as a time check, it's 7:22, so we're on track to finish at 7:30. I saw Richard raise his hand. Go ahead.
Downtown affordability has always been an issue for, like, I've been around here for about 42 years. So I would just offer a parameter to measure it by. What I hear from my wife is that if a woman can't buy underwear downtown, then there's something missing.
Anyone else? Amanda?
As point, balance. We need balance. We don't need just hoity-toity shops. We need balance. And I mean, that's critical. It's critical to get everybody downtown and have full access. Underwear or not, Peter Fish Case is here. Could you start carrying underwear at Burroughs? That is one, actually, a very affordable sports shop that we have in our downtown that has been run for years, and fully appreciative of that. So I think we should be careful to judge, open to change, and yes, balance.
Oscar?
Thank you. I want to end on a slightly different note, and Fish is here, so I'm going to talk about narrative. No, it's fine. We've talked a ton about problems tonight, and they do exist, but recently I was sort of confronted with a different lens, which is sometimes idly, with no hope, as a millennial, I will look online and see what houses are for sale. And the reality is that if something attractive goes on sale in Brattleboro, it sells instantly. If you put an apartment up for rent, it rents instantly. There is huge demand and appreciation for what Brattleboro is. It really is a special, attractive place, even with all its problems. So it's something that we have to shepherd and be careful with and take care of, but it's also something that we should be proud of and not walk around thinking, you know, it's the end of the world and this is a terrible place to live. This is a wonderful place to live. So it's really more about maintenance and care for me, and I think we can do a lot of good. A really exciting conversation on this last question, and I think any of these people would be great to work with on issues like this. That was the most animated I think I've heard a discussion of this sort for a while, so that was awesome. Thank you all.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak on this topic? Isaac?
I really appreciated, Amanda, what you said about the sky is the limit, because there is so much potential that Brattleboro has. I am so proud just looking out at this room. All you came to this debate, right? All these candidates are here running, and all of you who are watching online. There is so much human potential, and the natural beauty, the agricultural traditions that we have, the food production, there is so much opportunity for us, and I'm so excited to work with all of you, regardless of where we are a couple months from now, to create that community that we want.
Christina?
About balance, and I didn't get a chance to also mention bringing more life downtown, bringing more art, music, and that will help revive our downtown if we bring all of that good stuff, and we have to balance that with all of the police department with no trespassing signs and escorts to your car and a new police station downtown. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who's thinking that when you roll into a town and you see a bunch of police presence and signs that say, if you would like to be escorted to your car, call this number, and look, there's a new police department. It's not like, oh, I love this town. I can't wait to visit again. You're kind of looking around like, what's going on around here? So we really have to balance all of that effort with some more life and art and music and that. Red card. Bye.
Amanda?
If we could end by telling the audience how to be able to reach us and where to find out more information about us.
Just any other comments on this particular topic before we move to that? Tim?
Just because we mostly ended on a pretty upbeat and positive, forward-thinking comments there, I just wanted to remind everybody that there are two amazing things about to happen in our town. One is this ski jump that's internationally known, and it really is something to be proud of. And the other is a committee that my wife works on very tirelessly called Winter Carnival, and that is amazing family friendly activities that are going to be happening starting Saturday. It's kind of like a board thing, you know, so we're all practicing to uplift our town as well as do the right thing for our town. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Jill?
Coming back to the idea that, Tim said it, and I've said it a lot. People, I'm stealing it from tonight, but I do say it on a regular basis. If you build it, they will come. And I feel like some of the stuff that we do here has been great for building the town. I'm a little nostalgic for the heifer stroll and some of the highlights that event was. But I'm from the Midwest originally, have relatives that come out often, and they walk around downtown and they see all the flowers and they're like, I think it's so beautiful here. And curiously, Christina, my family has seen the signs for the police escorts and they're like, oh, that's really nice. Your police would even help us if for some reason I felt like I needed. I mean, they didn't take offense to it at all, that it was seen the opposite way from them. So I'm happy that we're talking on such a positive note and looking at good ways to move the town forward.
Thank you. Franz?
I began my remarks this evening by saying what a well-qualified, diverse, and talented group of candidates you have up here. And I think my opinion has been borne out by this discussion. For me personally, it's great to be a part of this group. And I think anybody out there, your problem is going to be deciding who you really like the most, because I think this is just a first-rate group of candidates. And your job now is to vote on March 4th. Make sure you do that. Thank you. Or early voting. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you all for your participation.
And to our moderator.
And Amanda asked if she could let people know, or all of you could let people know how to get a hold of you. So if you want to go down the line, I don't know if the mics are still on, but.
Okay, I'll do mine. You can reach me at amandaforvermont@gmail.com, or you can follow me on Instagram at amandaforvermont. And also, you can get absentee ballots as of today, but actually, you can't vote early in the town office till the 18th, so.
.com. I look forward to hearing from you. Unless, Christina, were you going to share how to...
I don't. I guess at home they can still hear us.
Office hours. Come see me at office hours.
I think my email address is Christina4Brattleboro@gmail.com.